Hi, Fatima.
Hi, Kelly.
How are you?
I am well.
Good,
I'm.
good.
I got the last painting in at the gallery today, and you know,
All dry and hung, and everything looks
yes,
beautiful. So
yes, they are, and the Meyer's done a good job of hanging everything as always.
beautiful. And so, why don't you tell everybody just where you're joining us from? You're in Santa Fe.
Santa Fe. I'm in my home. I've been really happy not to put it in the studio because it's very messy right now after a show. They said, "Oh, we're gonna have a Facebook Live. You should clean your studio." And I said,
Yeah.
"That would be impossible that day."
No, we want to focus on the paintings.
Yes.
Well, so I want to talk about the show, and so I thought we could start with just the piece together that titled the show and sort of inspired kind of the whole body of work. It was the first piece you created for the show, so maybe Meyer can kind of zoom in on that one, and you can tell us about that and just kind of how that resulted in the rest of the body of work.
That one was one of the first ones I started. Actually, I started it before the pandemic. And then I went away and I came back to it and it was pandemic times. And so it sort of evolved. And I thought, oh, this is actually, you know, quite appropriate to what's going on. Um, a hopeful image, and also an image of lovebirds or budgies. Mm-hmm. And that was in the springtime when I painted that as well. And I've been reading a lot I've been reading a lot of poems because of my last show, all about poetry and literary references in paintings. And this one, Emily Dickinson's poem, Hope is a Thing with Feathers. And I thought that was just lovely. And, a nice Emily Dickinson poem. Usually they can be kind of depressing, but this one is not.
A little more uplifting.
Yes. So, the rest of the show sort of grew from that because, there's these vining vegetation. And at the time when the whole world was in lockdown, nature sort of started flourishing because we've stopped all our activities. And I thought that was, I wanted to reflect that as well. And this togetherness of clasped hands and then of human beings being bound to each other.
Yeah. And that led to quite a few pieces with the imagery of the clasped hands then, right?
Yes. And a lot of, that sort of binding vines and sort of this intertwining imagery of nature and humans, our relationships with each other as being interconnected, and also with this feeling of being closed in, being cocooned. When I'm thinking in one way, I'm thinking, oh, cocooned is a comforting feeling, or feeling claustrophobic, being closed in.
Yeah, I love that with the last piece with the interlaced hands, and then this piece, how they've opened. So this one is also, I don't know, kind of emerging a little bit too, with nature is kind of flying and flourishing around it. So that's kind of a beautiful imagery also.
Yes, and it's this emerging from this dark vegetation and then, towards lightness.
And then you kind of, I guess, these larger pieces followed. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, that kind of transition from the clasped hands and that just this kind of seedling of togetherness and hope, and how that sort of led you to larger, more narrative pieces.
Well, the large piece, Charity, with the family of lemurs, this was actually, of course, I love monkeys and monkey-like creatures. They think they are sort of like an alter ego for the characters in paintings. But in this one, it's actually different. This one was inspired by the figure of Charity. There's a lot of paintings in art history where they show the allegorical figure of Charity, and most often she would be nurturing, she'll be surrounded by naked orphans, I think. And in this case, I thought of some animals, a family of animals, and maybe they've been orphaned out of or driven out of they're needing shelter or help. And so this is Charity with a little family.
And that was also, I know that, everything that's happened this year with the fires and all these kind of crazy natural disasters, and that has sort of, played a part in some of these too. And I know the other piece, so it kind of speaks to this with the kind of the orphaned animals. And then your other piece, was it, forgetting the title right now, fauna or flora, armor, the other.
Yes, Flora in armor.
Flora in armor, yeah. Because that has that fiery, was it a fiery
in the background, there's these fires that have started in the landscape. And we have been in California and Australia and here where I live, we've had so many wildfires. And also it's Flora, the figure of Flora, arming herself against, nature basically is under siege. She's in battle. She's in armor.
Yeah, it's kind of under assault, I think is kind of how you describe it to me. And is that bow, what's the bow around her arm signify?
I don't know.
I didn't think it in there.
She wanted an accessory.
Well, that works too. Gives her a little feminine feel, I guess.
Right.
Oh, I love that. Well, it's kind of fun how your work, I mean, generally your work is so rooted in, it's contemporary and fun, but it's rooted in such classical kind of traditions and also like mythology and opera and theater and all these classic stories. But do you typically pull in so many contemporary references, or has this just kind of been due to this year being so overwhelming that it's kind of found its way into the work?
I mean, I go back and forth. I think lately it's been mainly about classical references. But, before I would do things that would be inspired by more contemporary things. I did a painting once inspired by Kate Bush's Cloud Busting. So, there's all these, it's basically what I listen to and stuff. But, but lately, something that has been ongoing is with animals and endangered species. And, the lemurs and the black-footed ferrets right here, and they're here in New Mexico, and the plains or the prairie. I mean, they eat prairie dogs, but they are very endangered. And it was just something that I've noticed that when I start researching, when I want to paint this animal, and a lot of them are endangered. I would start looking something up, and then there would be that, and I hope that they won't just exist in paintings, that they flourish in the world.
And there's kind of a special edition to this show with your lithograph. So I thought maybe you could share a little bit about the story behind that and just how that whole process has evolved for you, since Meyer has never had.
I've never done.
Because you've never done one.
Well, I did them this year. I mean, well, I started last year, so I was very, very honored that Jack Lemmon, he's a master printer, and he was the founder of Landfall Press, which is here in Santa Fe. He contacted me and said, "Oh, would you like to do a print with us?" And I was just very, very happy to do it because I've wanted to do it for a long time. I've done a couple of etchings years and years ago, but never had opportunity to explore the technique further. And I wanted to, learn more about it. And I have always thought that it would be a good complement to my painting practice. And this one there's so much work that comes into, well, at least the way I make them, the prints.
What is the process like? Take us a little step by step so people kind of realize just how much goes into this.
Okay, so, I have to, it's based on a drawing. Actually, the first jasmines I started last year, the fall of last year, and it took a while to finish, and then early in the year, it did get editioned. And then I signed it, and then, the pandemic happened, so I waited before I released it. Mm-hmm. And this one, I actually, I rarely ever share my drawings, and I always find them very personal. Mm-hmm. And so I like to keep them private, but this one is probably as close as I get to releasing a drawing, but it's made with these different plates. So I would draw, on a plate. This one is on Mylar, and then they expose it to an aluminum plate, I think. I'm not entirely clear on the whole process. All I know is they tell me, draw this.
Yeah.
And then I do it, and then they're like, oh, but the process is so different from how I work that it was a huge learning curve because, my marks have to be dark enough or what. And so this one, it looks so simple, but it's like 5 plates. So it's like 4 different shades of brown and then the white plate. So each color has a different plate. So I would draw in that particular color, over, so that's my dog. He's usually at the openings, so.
Well, then it works. He'll have to say hi then before we go.
And he usually picks fights at openings. But with the printmaking, it is very involved, and it's a true collaborative process. And I just love how delicate this particular print is, and it's based on a poem by Rabindranath Tagore, and it really struck me because it's, he describes how, these jasmines sort of these memories that he carries throughout his life, they hold different memories for him. So, when I was a child, I picked up these things and I thought of this. And then when I was a young man, and then when he's an older man. And I thought that it was, just very, I was touched by it because it's sort of like not just in a person's life, but also in a poet's life, an artist's life, how these symbolic things mean different things to one as you go through different stages of life.
Mm-hmm. And it's the actual press that it was created on is pretty significant as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of how?
Yes.
In?
It's called the Voiron press.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very old press from 1860. And when I got into their studio, they said, "Oh, we're going to print it on this." And I'm like, "What?" And it's like, "Yeah, it's we got it from Paris, and they had it, I guess, by trade. I don't know how you ship this enormous, heavy thing.
Press, yeah.
It's huge. I mean, there's a YouTube video of it in action. It's enormous. And they said, "Well, we had to have it converted from steam power." It's like, okay. But it is from the 1860s, and it probably has a lot of history in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really so appropriate, I think, for your work, and that it printed, a lot of artists from that time period. It kind of connects you to some of these historic artists, and it's just a very romantic thing that it's your work is so tied to these classic romantic traditions, and to print on a press that's tied to that as well is
yes. And, I'm working on new prints. It's very hard. Because it's so new. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it feels so old, like working on a stone, drawing on a stone, and I'm carving into a copper plate. I mean, it's just, these really old school techniques that have their own romance to them. And the whole process is there's so much history to it that it does tie it as a painter. When, I feel like I'm, continuing a very long, very old tradition, and the same way with the prints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's an edition of 30, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that's now available through the gallery.
Yes.
And if maybe we just kind of scan through again one more time, and if there's anything else that you want to share about some of this work, or as a whole, kind of on the theme, anything else that comes to mind that you want to?
No, this one is this little hand. It's hard to see, but it's it's a sonnet. I've been doing a lot of hands with the poems written into a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, like love letters almost. But this one is Maya Angelou's poem "Refusal," and it's such this poem of longing and devotion, where she's like, "Well, I'm not, this one." The poet is, "I'm not going to die until I see you again," basically, is what it is. And it's well, Maya Angelou is a fantastic poet anyway, but I wanted that sort of love and loss and longing. And right now we're also, there's a lot of separation going on right now because of the pandemic. And this is sort of a response to that but also continuing what the themes that I'm normally address.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that. Tell us a little bit about how that was, because your work, I know you had said in your statement how you struggled a little bit when starting this to paint for this show, just because your work is so much about joy and
yes,
you had to layer in some of these love, like grief, but still with this underpinning of hope and happiness. So.
Right. Well, it was just really hard to, I just didn't know exactly just how much focus painting, we've never been in this situation before, just how difficult it was for me to paint with all the other things going on, even though I know intellectually, I'm painting, I'm in my studio and what's going on. But it does creep in, and it does actually makes things where it's just, I don't know, things were just taking me a long time to do. And I know that this is a very small, petite show, but each one did, was a lot of, thought and effort, more than usual. Even though it doesn't look like, it looks like what I normally just do, but to be able to have that undivided attention for painting, it was especially challenging.
Yeah. And then it just puts so much emotion layered into the work. And I think you can see that. It's really vibrant, and it's really, it's a beautiful, beautiful show. So I like describing it petite. It's not a small show, it's a petite show.
It's intimate and petite.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the work is beautiful. So, and then before will you go, this piece, when I see the lover's eye on the hand, then that's in a couple of them. Can you just talk about that a little bit, that symbolism that shows up in your work regularly?
Well, I've been doing that for a while. It's when I learned about lover's eyes, and they are Georgian lover's eyes, and they were paintings of, your secret love, because, it's just that eye, so sort of, kind of, oh, who's that? But with me, I love how they are a portrait within a portrait. There's another figure, another presence in the painting. And so there's the hand, the person with a hand, and then the person with the person whose eye that is. So that's a portrait within a portrait. And also, nowadays it's like a memento, these mementos of your loved ones, or either still with us or not, so that they're these little keepsakes.
Yeah, so those themes of kind of love and loss have kind of always been somewhat present in the work.
Yeah,
not all just kind of happy-go-lucky things all the time. It's
right.
Kind of always had a little bit of that balance, but it's just kind of even kind of deepened, I think, for this show this year. So
yes,
it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fatima, for joining me to chat about it. I know it's kind of like, it's sad to not be in the gallery, but it's, we'll take what we can get.
Yes, and I want to thank everyone who's tuned in, and also the guys at the gallery for all the work that they do, and for you for the lovely blog post that you wrote. It's really beautiful.
Well, thank you. Well, it's easy with Myers Artists. It makes it easy for me. So, and for the gallery too, I'm sure. So, well, have a lovely evening. And this show is up. The gallery's open, so everybody, can go and mask up and safely stroll through at a reasonable distance and see the work in person. So it is now available for you to do that, which is very exciting. So everyone go see the show, read about it online, call the gallery with any questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Fatima. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye.